I want to explore the idea today that our mental health and our mood and even our energy and other chronic health patterns can be related to how well our body is balancing our blood sugar, right? Our ability to regulate our glucose metabolism is really a foundational piece of our health, and it can impact so many things, including chronic patterns in our mood, like anxiety or depression, brain fog, forgetfulness, moodiness, all of these different patterns, as well as many other chronic health issues, whether that's chronic fatigue or chronic pain. And so I want to explore this idea today of how our blood sugar levels are really impacting our mood and our energy. I'm Michelle. I'm a functional nutrition counselor and a clinical herbalist, and I help my clients with their mood from a trauma informed perspective that really starts with regulating our nervous system biology, understanding that what's happening internally at this biological cellular level is actually having a profound impact on these chronic patterns that are showing up for so many people today, including anxiety, depression, and brain fog and low energy that so many people struggle with. And at the root of a lot of these issues is an issue with regulating our blood sugar levels. This idea that we can efficiently turn food, especially carbohydrates, into glucose and then burn that glucose for energy. And if we have a disruption in this ability to turn food and carbohydrates into glucose and use that for energy, it is going to create a lot of downstream issues and going to show up in our energy and our mood and other chronic patterns as we've discussed. And so I want to share with you a little bit of what to look for because we know that blood sugar issues, I mean, this is a chronic epidemic, right, in our society today. So many people are struggling with diabetes and chronic health issues that are actually related to this energy metabolism, which really is what our ability to regulate our blood sugar comes down to, even at that cellular level, right? And the ability to turn energy or food into energy is happening at that cellular level, the mitochondrial level. And there is a theory right now that is stating that all mental health and mood concerns are on some level related to this ability to metabolize and create energy in the body, this energy metabolism issue. And I would go as far as to say, yes, all chronic health issues at some level have mitochondrial dysfunction and potentially even blood sugar issues playing a role there. So this piece is really, really foundational. When I'm working with clients, I am always assessing their blood sugar levels and their blood sugar symptoms, if you will, so that I can understand a little bit more about what is impacting their mood and energy. I'm thinking of a client that I worked with recently, and she was doing so many good things in terms of her health. She was eating really well. She was getting massages and taking herbs and doing some really great things for her health. And yet she wasn't really seeing the improvement with some symptoms around depression and anxiety and fatigue that were showing up for her. And so when I asked her about how she might be noticing symptoms of blood sugar dysregulation, she actually had several symptoms. And I want to share with you what some of these signs of disrupted blood sugar, or what we could call disrupted glucose metabolism, might look like. And so one of the first things I ask is, do you notice if you miss a meal or you're a little bit late to lunch, for example, do you get kind of shaky or irritable, right? If you miss a meal, we call that hangry. Maybe you get a little dizzy or lightheaded, right? There's that sense of your blood sugar dropping. And if you don't eat something, right, you feel like you might even pass out in some cases. And that is actually a sign, right, that our body is not maintaining blood sugar levels efficiently. And that can be related to reactive hypoglycemia, which is one issue we can have with glucose metabolism. Maybe after a meal, right? We notice an hour later we're hungry, Or we might notice signs like weight gain around the middle. Whenever I have a client who's noticing weight gain, I always ask them, where do you notice that weight gain? Is it just all over, or is it primarily around this midsection, right? Around the abdomen? That is something I often relate to blood sugar dysregulation, right? We could relate that to our cortisol response as well, but that actually plays an important role in helping the body to regulate our blood sugar levels. So, weight gain around the middle can be a sign of insulin resistance, right? And we're not able to efficiently get that glucose, that energy into the cell so that we can burn it for energy efficiently. Instead, because we can't get glucose into the cell, we have to store it, right? We have to turn that energy, that glucose into our storage molecule for energy, which is fat, right? And so we start seeing that weight gain around the midsection. There are some other signs that I look for, especially with insulin resistance. You might notice things like skin tags, those little kind of clear little flaps of skin, and especially like around the neck or groin or under the underarm area. That is a typical place to see skin tags. And that can actually be a sign of insulin resistance. So if you're noticing some of these signs, you want to pay attention to these. Sometimes these things seem unrelated and they may not be noticeable unless you're passing out from not eating a meal, but they kind of creep up on us. And yet, these are the signals that our body is giving us that something is out of balance. A few other signs to watch for include, do you get really tired? Do you have fatigue after a meal? Or maybe you have fatigue that's relieved by eating a meal. And in either of those situations, right, there's some signs there that we're not efficiently keeping our blood glucose regulated. And we want to actually have steady energy throughout their day, whether we're eating a meal. We shouldn't feel sleepy afterward, or we shouldn't feel sleepy before a meal. We should just feel hungry, and we should just notice that that sense of hunger is relieved by eating. That's really the goal, right, with our meals. And so I want you to think a little bit here about any signs you might be noticing of disrupted glucose metabolism, right? That potentially your blood sugar levels are impacting your energy. And again, this is so foundational because everything comes back to this idea of being able to efficiently turn food into energy, and even at that mitochondrial level, right? To efficiently turn uh, food into energy at that mitochondrial level. And so I want to talk about a few solutions here. Like, what do we do if we're noticing some blood sugar dysregulation signs? Well, obviously, of course, a lot of this is related to our diet. So, if we're eating a lot of refined carbohydrates or just carbohydrates in general, even healthy ones, we may not be able to efficiently turn those into glucose, right, into energy in the cell. We start storing it as fat, and so making sure you're eating plenty of protein, healthy fats, fiber, those are all going to help slow down the insulin spike, right? The glucose spike that is a part of that energy metabolism that we want to manage. And so if we have too many carbs at one meal, our blood sugar really goes up. We release insulin, which is a hormone that basically helps the glucose get into the cells so we can burn it for energy. And if we have too much glucose in the bloodstream, we may not be able to efficiently get all of that glucose into the cell and burn it for energy. And that's where it goes to the liver. It's stored as fat, and we start to see that weight gain around the middle or some of the early signs of fatty liver. And so we want to make sure we are doing what we can with our diet, of course, to slow down this glucose spike, and eating some good quality protein, some healthy fat and fiber. Those things are all going to help slow down this glucose spike that is impacting our energy and our brain health as well. And I also want to mention that there are a lot of herbs, right, that can actually help us with regulating our blood sugar levels. So, this is really exciting to me as an herbalist that we can actually use herbs and foods to shift our blood sugar levels And sometimes when we are dealing with chronic blood sugar issues, and potentially we have for a long time, right? Like these things don't just shift overnight, but these become chronic patterns of not being able to efficiently turn glucose into energy that really shift our metabolic pathways. And so, in order to shift things back in the right direction, where we have good, what we would call metabolic flexibility, this ability to take in nutrients and glucose and other nutrients and efficiently turn it into energy, then that's really our goal, right? This metabolic flexibility. And herbs can really help us with doing that, with it, regaining our metabolic flexibility. And so things like cinnamon, of course, are really lovely for this. Some of our bitter herbs like bitter melon or berberine containing herbs, you can actually get berberine as a supplement. It's actually just a plant constituent that is found in things like Oregon grape and other berberine containing herbs. And these are actually really lovely to help balance blood sugar, bring blood sugar levels back into the healthy range. But we can also use a class of herbs called adaptogens. There are several adaptogens that can help with regulating our blood sugar balance. And one of them is American ginseng, which is a lovely, nutritive, energizing, stimulating adaptogen that is really wonderful for anyone who's dealing with fatigue, who's noticing blood sugar dysregulation, maybe some signs of insulin resistance. American ginseng is a really lovely tonic herb. Another adaptogen that I really love to use, especially if I'm working with a client who is noticing these signs of blood sugar dysregulation, I like to work with an herb called holy basil, or sometimes you'll hear it called tulsi. And this herb is really lovely because it does help with regulating blood sugar levels as well. And it's a really lovely herb that you can use as a tea. So it's just a lovely way to support blood sugar levels throughout your day by sipping some holy basil tea. And you can combine it with other herbs like rose or ginger or green tea as an example to help regulate blood sugar levels. So herbs can play a really beautiful role in helping to regulate our blood sugar levels. But, I want to mention as well that our blood sugar isn't just about what we're eating. I know we talked about carbohydrates and how those impact blood sugar levels and how we can bring in some protein, fat, and fiber in the diet to help shift our blood sugar levels. But there are other things that impact blood sugar besides just what we're eating. Stress, of course, is actually a really big one. And the reason is if we think about our nervous system response, which is related to the stress response, when we're stressed, we release cortisol. We call it the stress hormone. And cortisol is actually going to increase our blood sugar levels. It's one of the things that cortisol does. And the reason is that cortisol, as our stress hormone, it is helping to bring up our blood sugar levels so we can do what we need to do in our stress response, which is that fight or flight response, right? We need to take action in order to move through the stress response. So we need energy. And so that's why the body releases cortisol and it causes the blood sugar levels to go up. And then we're dealing with those chronic blood sugar elevations that are really so hard on the body, right? They drive up inflammation, and we want to address that. We want to address our insulin response to the glucose as well. And some other things that can impact our glucose levels are our gut microbiome. So if we don't have good healthy gut microbes, the good guys as I like to call them, or we have pathogens, gut pathogens, that those can impact our blood sugar levels. Our liver health can actually impact our blood sugar levels as well. If we need to support our liver because we've been exposed to toxins, plastics, heavy metals. Those things all impact our liver health, which can then impact our blood sugar levels. So you can see that this is a fairly broad topic, that there's a lot of things impacting your blood sugar. But the main things you can start to address are working with your diet and working with herbs to help regulate your glucose response and keep it within that healthy range. I have a free gift for you. I call this my mood reset method top 10 strategies. And this is just a handout of the top 10 things that I recommend starting with for anyone who's struggling with those chronic issues with their mood, including anxiety or depression or brain fog and foggy thinking or forgetfulness. And so you can download that. There is a link below, and I also, with each of those top 10 strategies, I list different herbs that I recommend to support each of those steps. But you'll find that my second strategy is actually regulating your blood sugar. And I share with you a little bit more about how to do that. So grab that top 10 strategies guide. And I want you to start thinking about your blood sugar this week. Really notice what happens when you eat a meal. Do you get tired? Do you have more fatigue after a meal, or do you get shaky or hangry if you miss a meal? What happens if you eat a little more carbohydrate or protein? Do you notice a shift in your energy and your mood? Start paying attention to your blood sugar, and you're going to start noticing a lot of improvement with your energy and your mood as you start working with these strategies and these herbs.